Mary, I would recommend that we go ahead and begin our CAO committee meeting today. Thank you so much.
Okay, then I will officially call the meeting to order and ask you to read the statement regarding today's virtual electronic meeting that we need to get into the record.
Yes, thank you so much, Mary. Before we get started, I just ask for everybody's patience as I read this into the record. First, welcome to the January 6th, 2021 Chief Administrative Officer Committee meeting. We appreciate everybody's continued participation in these meetings. This meeting is being held electronically and remotely pursuant to the declared state of emergency in the Commonwealth of Virginia in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of our CAO committee members, our staff, and the general public. We're using Zoom for today's meeting. And these electronic meetings that we're holding of the CAO committee are required to complete essential business on behalf of our region. Per the requirements of the Code of Virginia, we posted the meeting notice, agenda, and supporting documentation for today's meeting on our organization's website for public review. We also provided electronic copies of the information for the meeting to our committee members and other interested parties. Today's meeting is being recorded. It is a public meeting. We will post a recording of this meeting on our website following today's proceedings. Members of the public were invited to submit comments in advance of today's meeting. We did not receive any public comments in advance of today's meeting. However, I am aware that we have at least one member of our public today who has indicated he would like to address the CAO committee, Madam Chair, under the public comment period. Before we begin today's meeting, just a couple of real quick housekeeping tips. We ask that all participants remain on mute with their phones and computers as we're all multitasking until it's your opportunity to provide input. After speaking, please remember to go back on mute. Please identify yourself and your locality when speaking or providing a motion or a second. And just a reminder, per the requirements of the Code of Virginia, all votes taken today must be made by roll call vote and recorded in the minutes. So with that introduction, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back over to you and just thank everybody for their continued participation.
Thank you, Mr. Crum. And as you said, as people were coming online, I just want to express my desire that hope everyone had a wonderful holiday season, however they chose to celebrate. And I know it was probably very different for all of us given COVID, but hopefully it was a time of rest and relaxation and safety for everyone. And we're all looking forward to a great new year together. We do a lot of great work together here, and I'm really excited to be part of this team and to help advance our region, as I know all of you are as well. Because we do need to do roll calls, I'm going to do as we did last time and ask if we can get an approval of the agenda as well as approval of minutes in the same motion so that we can avoid two back-to-back roll calls just for efficiency. Are there any comments or changes to the agenda or the minutes before receiving a motion? If not, can we receive a motion in a second?
So moved.
Could you, I don't know if Bob could tell, can you state?
Yeah, Michael Stallings for the motion.
Yes, Michael Stallings, sorry.
Thank you.
Jarrett, second.
All right, thank you. Mr. Crum, can you please do the roll call for us?
Yes, so this will be a roll call for approval of our agenda and approval of minutes. Ms. Bunting from Hampton.
Aye.
Mr. Dehaney, Virginia Beach.
Aye.
Mr. Fedor's, Gloucester.
Aye.
Dr. Filer, Norfolk.
Aye.
Ms. Jarrett, Franklin.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson, Southampton.
Aye.
Mr. Keaton, Isle of Wight.
Aye.
Mr. Moore, Suffolk.
Aye.
Mr. Morgan, York County.
Aye.
Mr. Pace, Portsmouth. Mr. Pace. Mr. Price, Chesapeake.
Aye.
Ms. Rolfe, Newport News.
Aye.
Ms. Rawlins, Surrey. Ms. Rawlins. Moving on to Mr. Saunders from Windsor.
Aye.
Mr. Stallings, Smithfield.
Aye.
Mr. Stevens, James City.
Aye.
Mr. Trivett, Williamsburg.
Aye.
And Mr. Wheeler, Pocosi. Madam Chair, the motions carry approving the agenda and approving the minutes. If I may, I know we have other guests. If I may ask for your permission to complete the roll call, I'd just like to go through and identify all those if I could.
Yes, please do.
Okay, I'm going to call out names. If you could please come on and introduce yourself. Caleb Smith, Caleb, are you on today?
Yes, I'm here from Congresswoman Elaine Loria's office.
As always, thank you, Caleb. Moving down through the list, Chris Stone from Clark Nexon.
Morning, everybody, and Happy New Year. Chris Stone, Senior Principal with Clark Nixon. I'm also on the Joint Subcommittee for Coastal Flooding, and I'll just make an announcement that the next meeting for the Joint Subcommittee is going to be on January 12th at 3 o'clock, and it will be a virtual meeting.
Thank you, Chris. Let's move on to our senators' offices. Ms. Diane Kaufman from Senator Kane.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Diane. Drew Lumpkin from Senator Warner.
Hi, this is Drew Lumpkin. I'm the Regional Director for United States Senator Mark Warner. Thank you for having me, and Happy New Year's.
We have a few staff from the HRPDC I want to be certain we introduce. First, from our Economics Department, our Chief Economist, Greg Grittendorf.
Good morning and Happy New Year, everyone. Greg Rotendorf, Chief Economist with the PDC.
Also, an economist from the PDC, Catherine Renon. Catherine? I know Catherine's with us today. I've seen her signed on there. So Catherine, I appreciate you being on with us today. Our deputy.
Good morning.
Oh, hi, Catherine. Thanks for being here, Catherine. Keith Kennedy, our Deputy Executive Director.
Hello, everyone. Keith Kennedy, HRPDC.
Very good. From our City of Portsmouth, a member of our public, Mr. Mark Geduldig-Yatrowski, sir.
Thank you, sir. Happy New Year, everybody. I am a resident of Portsmouth and recently became a member of the Regional Community Advisory Committee.
Very good. Thank you, sir. And we'll be back to you for public comment in just a moment. I'd like to do an introduction to everybody. Introducing our new Deputy Executive Director in charge of our transportation program. Pavitra, if you could come on there a second. I'd like to introduce Dr. Pavitra Parathisarthi, who has joined us at the HRTPO to lead our transportation planning department. Pavitra comes to us from Seattle. She was previously with the Puget Sound Regional Council. If she sounds familiar, she spent some time in Hampton Roads about 8 years ago, spent a few years here at the TPO. So we're really excited to have Pavitra back. Pavitra, do you mind saying hello real quick here?
Yeah, thank you, Bob, and good morning to all of you. Just started here, looking forward to working with you all and really excited to be here. So Bob, thought it'd be good if I join in the call today, and I hope to see you all hopefully sometime in person, but for now, Zooming it is. So thanks again for the introduction, Bob.
Thank you, Pavitra.
Thank you.
So we told Pavitra that we were expecting her to bring all those secrets from Seattle to Hampton Roads. So we're looking forward to that. Let's see. Ron Carley, Dr. Carley from Old Dominion University.
Morning, everybody. Happy New Year. 2021 will be better.
And Madam Chair, I am sure I missed someone there. I did my best. If I could just pause and ask if there's anybody I missed for introductions. Okay. Madam Chair, I'm going to turn that back over to you.
All right. Well, that does bring us to public comment, and understand that we do have one public comment today. Feel free to take your 3 minutes and share with us what's on your mind today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy New Year to everybody, if I didn't say that earlier. First, let me thank you all for entertaining and implementing the idea of doing these meetings with an audio and a video component. As a visual learner, it's much more engaging for me to be able to see and hear people, as well as to see the exhibits when you have presentations. So I very much appreciate that. I would ask you all, having been a resident of this region for going on 48 years now, I'm not aware of a continuing task force at the regional level addressing issues of criminal activity and law enforcement. And I would ask you, if there is not such an organization, if you would consider creating one. Unfortunately, one of the things that my locality gets a lot of attention in the media about is crime problems. And yet I know from national media sources that especially during this pandemic, there is a pandemic of crime across the country. And I assume that each of you in your respective localities are seeing spikes. So I think because of the benefit of working together, there may be some synergies possible from dealing with this regionally. Thank you very much.
Thank you again for being with us and for sharing your thoughts with us. And we do appreciate your civic engagement. You're always here with us. Thank you. All right. The next item is our 757 Recovery and Resilient Action Framework. And we have with us today John Martin from the Southeastern Institute of Research, who will be making a presentation. Bob, did you have any introductory remarks you want to make before we turn it over to John?
Just that we thought this is an important point in the process for John Martin to come in on behalf of Doug Smith from the Hampton Roads Alliance and let you all know, as leaders of your localities, where this process is, how things are going to be rolled out over the next 30 days. We have some staff signed on, Catherine Renone, Greg Grutendorf, who have been involved in this effort from the start. I think this is a great opportunity for John just to let you know what to expect as you look out over the next 1 to 2 months on this effort. So John, I believe that you should be able to share a screen, and if you're ready to go, I'll step aside and let you take this forward.
Great. Can everybody see my screen okay?
It's looking good, John, yeah.
All right, terrific. Well, when COVID hit, the Hampton Roads Business Coalition got formed and really led by the Alliance. You see all these familiar logos, and it was, I think, a great example of collaboration across the region to really address this pandemic. And a lot of activity took place right up front, some survey work, and that continued. And then out of that survey, packaging legislative insights and concerns we could pass on to our national delegation. And then online information systems got set up by the two chambers, and everybody in this coalition was pushing information into that and pushing people towards it. And then informative conference calls were set up with healthcare experts and national leaders, so our local business executives could have access. And then the Business Recovery Forum was created. And so all this activity just pulled this coalition tighter and tighter together. And the latest effort over the last 5 to 6 months has been creating this Recovery and Resilience Action Framework. And that's what I want to share with you in some detail. This is a plan that is almost finished. It's being vetted right now with the creators of it, some 200 business leaders. And it looks like a very traditional plan when you look at the table of contents, but I assure you it is anything but traditional. It really is innovative in the way it's identified programs and areas of responsibility and organizations that will be responsible, and really a 3-year perspective on how to help our economy recover faster and recover in a better state, a more resilient state. This presentation and sharing is really a precursor to what we're going to have for you in February. Right now, through our process, we are in January and sharing this full 100-page PowerPoint plan with the creators, the 200 business leaders that created this. Next month, we plan to share it with you in detail and the mayors, still in draft form, to get your feedback. So you're getting an overview, a quick 15-minute overview of what's involved here. It starts off with our goals and what we're trying to accomplish. And it really is to build a better, more resilient economy for the people of the 757. And we have specific measurable objectives. We really want to improve our numbers economically in terms of job growth and wage growth and GDP. And you might recall it took us longer than the rest of the nation to get out of the Great Recession and to come back to pre-Great Recession levels. We don't want that same story for the pandemic. We really want to come back faster. And we want to come back stronger too, more resilient to future shocks. So the three headlines: faster recovery, stronger economic growth, and future resilience. So in putting this together, it has really been a collaborative effort. And I've been honored to be the consultant to help here and share this with you. But we went and started with understanding all the past and recent studies and reports we could get our hands on. The 11 committees were set up around topic areas and industries. These business leader surveys that we conducted, we gained insight on a lot of issues through those, and we tapped into subject matter experts. And it led to insights on industries, on our whole region, and insights on a vision that could unite us in terms of the economy we want. And that led to this action framework. I'm not going to read through all these names, but you can scan it and probably recognize some people. I know Dr. Carley's on this conversation today. But the first step started with subject matter experts to really say, what's it going to take to turn our economy around faster than it will happen on its own? What intentionality do we need? And then from there, we felt like we had to really get the confidence of business leaders as high as possible to say, we can do this. We can work together and put this action plan together. So a series of thought leader videos were created, and you probably recognize many of these names as well, and run through social media. And I think gathered some enthusiasm for doing this strategic plan together. And then committees were set up, and 10 committees set up around industries and important topic areas. And they had a chair as well as a co-chair. And interestingly, we assigned a next generation person vice chair to it. So Catherine Renone is on this phone and part of the staff at the Hampton Roads PDC. Was a vice chair on the integration committee, for example. And that last committee was really important. All the work coming out of all these inputs had to get integrated into the framework. And that was the job of the integration committee, headed by Jim Kibler and Glenn Carrington. So the research was really important, and we tapped into that. These were customized studies targeting business leaders. So by over 1,000 people participated. And then the last step was this integration committee. And this is where you had to really mine all of the recommendations from the various committees and all of the insights from the research and the experts and put it into a framework that's practical and makes sense, and one that we think can really work. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the insights that we uncovered, but I think two insights are particularly interesting for you as the group you are, and working together, independently, but coming together to work for our region. When we asked business leaders about the idea of working together and collaboration, you can see 85% of them said it's very critical that we have collaboration to get us out of this impact of the pandemic. They weren't so high in rating the past decade of collaboration or the collaboration today. And I think when Bob Crum always says this is the most misunderstood concept in Hampton Roads, I 100% agree. We collaborate so much. I just don't think that it's well known, that people don't even know this meeting is going on is sort of a fact. Number 5 out of the some 10 major insights that we have in the action plan really gets to the point that when people are asked about what does regional collaboration mean, they always associate it to the governments, the 17 local governments, when in fact, we know it's so much more, with tourism's working together and colleges and universities and the private sector working together. And so we feel like part of this plan in the development of it and rollout of it is really going to be a metaphor for more and more people across all sectors working together. And that's really what it's going to take to come out of this economic impact from the pandemic. One of the things we also heard from just about everybody involved in pulling this work together was we needed a vision, not necessarily a vision for the whole community, but a vision for our economy. And so we help cities and communities develop visions. And we always start with what are the values that people want in terms of their future, and in this case, in terms of their future economy. So it's based on values, and it's based on what makes a place unique. And it's based on what are the values today, but what are the values going to be in the future? What are people going to become more and more enamored with and expect for their community? So we mined a lot of different research, including some that the Planning District Commission had done on visioning and values a couple of years ago, and a lot of the work that we did within Vision 2020, the regional branding initiative. And we identified the values you see here, the welcoming community spirit and inclusive and equitable community, coastal lifestyle environment, and so forth. And so that really led us to these pillars, these values that we're calling our pillars. And based on those, we pulled together this statement, this statement that really captures what we think is the economic vision that we can all rally behind. Our economy is resilient and innovative. Here we all work together to grow our economy and advance the well-being of all residents. We're inspired by what we value, a commitment to inclusion and equity, a strong military presence, a welcoming community spirit, and our old salt, new vibe coastal lifestyle, making our region one of a kind and one for all. So with that, leading the way, we thought through an action framework. And this is why we're calling the whole plan a framework. We really starts with those values, but we identified 5 strategic pillars that we really have to work on to really drive our economy to a better place. Build regional unity, grow new jobs, grow, retain, and attract talent, grow resiliency, and this last one, advance regional infrastructure. And so thinking about those values, how do we build on those values and have them show up in these strategic pillars? And this is the work that came out of all these different committees of figuring out the strategic pillars and the actual implementation programs that would have the biggest impact, how they line up across each one of these pillars. And so I'm not going to go through each one of these. There are 30 different results-oriented programs. I'm just going to give you one example across each one of these, but this is in essence the gestalt of this plan, these 30 different programs, and each one of these programs has a lead organization we're calling the convener, and they're responsible for the content in each program as well as the key performance indicators. And we're going to hold all of these folks accountable, in fact, through a public dashboard and through events that will be held every 6 months or so. We're going to update this plan. We're going to show the progression across these programs, and we're going to move forward as a collective, as a coalition. So here's some examples of the program areas. The first one, build regional unity. And this is the idea that I think was probably, it was the one area that everybody agreed on, that we have to be more united in understanding where we're going, what our vision is, how we're going to get there together. So part of our plan calls for the building of 757 champions. And we set it as an initial goal, 1,000 champions. And these are business leaders who are going to get behind and work this plan and be part of this plan. And you're going to see in other components, other pillars where they're going to really be needed. But we're going to start a campaign to recruit, starting off 1,000 people, but we're not going to stop there. But we're going to have business leaders sign up to do a number of things to support this plan. I'm not going to go through this entire list, but the idea we feel very, something that's very needed is a campaign, a local campaign that builds an understanding and builds pride in what Hampton Roads is all about. In fact, through our business leader research, we found out that a lot of people don't know it's 17 different communities. And so this local pride building campaign is going to be created for, but run by the business community. And we've got other programs you're going to hear about in a minute that try to increase the resiliency of businesses. So different content's going to be put together. And we're going to call on these 1,000 business leaders and their companies to be the early adopters of some of these programs. But this is a key component of the overall plan. And I just mentioned the Did You Know campaign. I think this is going to be the first thing we'll see out of the gate that will be exciting, and it will demonstrate that we're starting this plan. This plan is officially kicked off. Grow new jobs is the second pillar. And here we really want to build on the work where the Alliance started and to make sure that we're adding in new jobs and building back the jobs that we lost through this impact. And so there are a lot of different strategies, different program elements underneath this overall pillar. One I'll just mention is the offshore wind. And I think you guys know a lot of effort is going against this, and the Alliance has established a program to coordinate our local actions or regional actions with the state's initiatives. And so we felt like this was an existing program, but one that was important to put into this action framework, because part of what the action framework is doing is being an educational tool to the whole business community, that we have all these major things going on. We have some existing programs like this one, but we also have new programs like the 757 Champions. And then grow retention, grow and retain and attract talent. The example here is we've got to retain the talent that we're educating from our local universities and colleges. And so a program that's getting it put in place, and the Hampton Roads Workforce Council is driving this, is retaining our new graduates through a Campus 757 program. And this one's modeled very much off of the model that works in Philadelphia called Campus Philly, and a program that's being stood up in Richmond called RVA Campus. The fourth area is grow resiliency. So we don't want to just build our economy back. We want to build it back in a way that it's stronger than ever, and in a way that it can withstand future shocks. And so this means diversifying our economy, but also helping companies become more resilient. And through our research, we saw that a lot of companies had to change their business model to survive where we are now. But in asking business leaders what they wanted, we heard a number of people say, we really would like to have help in understanding business models and how to become more resilient. And so ODU and Norfolk State are working together to put in place some content, some training on business model development and strength testing, and to be able to share this through self-help materials, but also through consulting. And so this is going to be rolled out to our business community for those companies that don't have strategic planning built in-house. And there are a whole number of other content-oriented deliverables like this in terms of helping businesses build their resiliency. Another one is diversity inclusion. And we heard through our research that business leaders wanted to be more competent and more effective in putting together their D&I programming. And so Ron Carley's on the phone on this Zoom call. He's part of the work that's happening to put together programming that can be rolled out to the business community, some of it for free and others to be there as a consultant to help. But this is part of helping individual companies become more resilient. And then the last pillar, strategic pillar, is advance regional infrastructure. And so everyone on this call has a definition of infrastructure. It usually is around the transportation facilities or sanitation or water supply. And that's all important. But when you look at our action framework, we broaden the definition of infrastructure and put a couple of other things in there that we think are vitally important. And one of those is to share our region's story with the outside world. Through the research that we did on Envision 2020, we realized that people do not have an understanding of not only what Hampton Roads is about, but where it is. And so we have to put an effort together to tell our story. And so we're going to use 2021 to put together the plan and the creative and how we want to go about this in a funding model and launch this at the end of 2021 or early 2022. But this was, again, another one of the major themes that we heard from the 200 people that were helped create this plan, that our time has come, we have to tell our story. And so I've gone through a lot in a short time. Think about this in terms of 30 programs under those different pillars. We have put together a prioritization on terms of what we're going to focus on immediately, and then the things that we'll tackle next, and then into 2023. So we're looking at this as a 3-year plan with specific priorities. and accountability. And this is really important. We feel like in the past, a lot of plans have been put together, but we haven't stayed with them or held them accountable. And in this case, every one of those 30 programs has specific KPIs. And we're building a dashboard that's going to be a public-facing dashboard, and it's going to have the goals, and we're going to monitor those and track those and post our performance and be held accountable publicly at regular events. In fact, the State of the Region event is we're going to be part of that and sharing the progress on our plan to date. And so I would just leave you with this idea that we're going to ultimately deliver for the 757. We're going to deliver on a greater appreciation of our core values. These 5 strategic pillars are going to lead the way, and we're going to end up with quantitative improvement across these specific economic measures in terms of growing number of companies, attracting new companies, growing jobs, increasing the average household revenue, growing our regional GDP, diversifying our economy, and frankly, preparing us for a different future, a more resilient future. So I think the final idea here is what started this at the very beginning. When COVID hit, the business community united. And I have been working in this market for some time. I now live in Hampton Roads, and together stronger, I've never seen it more personified than now. That this effort has really been the product of the Alliance leadership, but all these organizations coming together and putting this action framework together for the future of Hampton Roads. So I'll stop there and be happy to take any questions. You're going to get a full chance to review this deck in its entirety and offer comments, and we will make adjustments from there. But thank you for this opportunity for this quick briefing.
Mr. Martin, I want to thank you for being with us. And because I do sit on the Alliance board, I've seen some of this. I'm really excited about the work that's been done. But I think it was a great presentation to bring those who may not have been familiar with the effort that's been going on up to speed. And let's just open the floor for any questions folks have. Any comments, questions? All right.
Mary, if I may.
Yes.
Yes. So John, one question that I just want to throw out there, of course, the Virginia Peninsula Chamber has been very engaged. Just to stress, this framework is a framework for our entire 17 Hampton Roads jurisdiction footprint region.
Yes.
And I just wanted to stress that. The other item then, John, is what might our city managers, county administrators expect in terms of, what's their role? What might the next, 4 months look like, and what can they expect in terms of any engagement?
Well, I'd have to defer to Doug on that specific answer, but I think that the first thing that should happen is to use the opportunity in February to really review the plan and offer your critique and advice. That right now we're in the process of doing this with the 200 people, business leaders who created the plan. But if you and your mayors feel so inclined, I think inviting the Alliance as one of the leaders of this coalition to come and present to your city councils and to explain what's going on, I think that would make a lot of sense. I know Doug is keeping the red team involved, the economic development leaders across the region. But I think having more and more people understand this and encouraging at the local level, applauding businesses for stepping up and doing this, and encouraging local businesses to join as 757 champions, the more people we can get behind this, the more it's going to work. And the more we'll start thinking about being one region and collaborating together and burying forever this idea that it's just up to the governments to do this. I think this plan is a way for us to teach everybody, no, it takes everybody to move forward.
Well, great. So I assume that via Bob or otherwise, you will get the plan as well as the presentation to each of us to review and provide feedback and comments. And
That's right.
a requested time frame for that, so that, you know, we don't let that slip inadvertently. And we will all do our part in doing so. I do want to build on something that Bob said. And I think it's really important that as we present in the, you know, in larger audiences, and I'm sure it would come forward in a broader report, but just the emphasis on the peninsula as well as the South Side. You know, and just as one example, and it caught my attention when you were going through it, the higher education slide only had institutions that were on the South Side. So for instance, you know, William and Mary wasn't referenced, Hampton University wasn't referenced and stuff. And so sometimes people read stuff into that. It may be that, you know, that's intended, but if the names of peninsula institutions aren't there, it causes angst for people and thinking that, you know, we want to be united, but we're only really focusing on the South Side versus the peninsula. And I know, because I've been involved, that that's not the case.
Okay.
But the presentations and materials need to really be reflective of the peninsula as well. And that's just one example.
No, that's fantastic input. We'll make that very clear.
Great. All right. Well, I just want to give one more chance if there's any comments or questions. If not, we'll get those materials and you know, a requested timetable to provide feedback and any other next steps. All right.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you again for being with us.
You bet. Take care.
Bob.
Bob, I believe the next item on the agenda was to talk about the General Assembly session. And I know you wanted to give a briefing on the regional legislative agenda, as well as provide an opportunity for any managers to share priorities from their localities that may be of regional interest. So I'll turn it over to you to start the conversation. And then certainly this is intended to be a broader discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mary. Yes, we thought with us heading into General Assembly session, just a good time to touch base with everyone. Of course, the General Assembly session convenes on January the 13th. This will be a short session, 46 days, that's scheduled to adjourn on February the 27th. Now, we all know that from recent practice, that can be extended, but that's the game plan at the current time. What I wanted to do is just start off with a quick reminder, and I'm going to share screen. Hopefully that came up, Mary, okay?
Yes, it's up.
Okay. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of quick items from your regional legislative agenda approved at the PDC and TPO. Some of these items, we have live bills that are being introduced. And I just wanted to give you a quick update on that. And then, as Mary said, we'd really like to go through the localities and see what hot items you might have as you head into session. So obviously at the regional level, coastal resiliency was a big item for us this year. One of the things that we have that came out of our coastal resilience subcommittee, which is your elected officials, was a request that the Commonwealth create the Virginia Commonwealth Flooding Board. The idea here would be to mirror what the CTB does around transportation, where you have the people that focus on transportation at the state level meeting on a regular basis to address statewide transportation issues, aligning all the departments towards those efforts and aligning funding to address those issues. We believe that having a similar entity to deal with flooding in Virginia, called the Virginia Commonwealth Flooding Board, would be an important step. I can tell you that Senator Lewis and others are preparing a bill, and it will be submitted to consider, ask for the creation of the Virginia Commonwealth Flooding Board. So that's one item that's receiving some attention from our General Assembly members. Another item is requesting that the state SMART Scale program, which, as you're all aware, is the major program for determining how transportation funds are allocated at the state level, that the SMART Scale program consider resilience consideration in their funding program. What we've heard from a number of localities is some frustration that if your transportation project addresses resiliency, it has additional costs, and the higher your costs are, the less competitive you are. Your economic score goes down. And the feeling is that that's really not correct if we're really seeing localities trying to proactively address flooding and resiliency. This is an item that Virginia Beach has really been taking a lead role on. They've worked with some delegates and senators. I've received outreach from the Secretary of Transportation office This is also a bill that will be making its way through. Once these bills are finalized and submitted this week, I'll be able to get you bill numbers, and of course we will be tracking them as well. Another big item around flooding had to deal with disclosure, property disclosure requirements to provide information about a property's vulnerability or history of flood damage. As you know, if you're going to buy an automobile, you can get a Carfax report and find out if your automobile you're purchasing was in a flood. If you're buying real estate, it's sort of a buyer beware approach. We understand that balance and some of the difficulties that presents. But we really believe that if you're going to buy a property, it's important to be aware of any history on a property of past flooding. Delegate Converse Fowler, who is a realtor, is going to be submitting a bill addressing this item. Keith Kennedy and I, as well as HRPDC Chair Andrea McClellan, have been in conversations with the State Association of Realtors. And the realtors understand that this is an important issue to address. We're hopeful that we're going to be able to see some movement in some bills that will generate discussion around this item as well. I wanted to stay with coastal resiliency a second. One of the things we were really concerned about is precipitation predictions. What we have found is that the report that's used to size our stormwater systems that predicts rainfall predominantly comes from the Atlas 14 report, which is prepared by the National Weather Service. But that report has not been updated for the Hampton Roads region since 2006. And as you all know, rainfall trends and patterns have changed pretty dramatically in that 14, 15-year period. Virginia Beach, as an example, did some studies, and they found that their rainfall is happening at a 20% increase over the current Atlas 14 report. And the concern is that we're really undersizing some of our stormwater facilities. Really good news on this one, though. Admiral Ann Phillips has advocated and worked through the Chesapeake Bay program and has found money to update these rainfall predictions. So we don't have the numbers yet, but we have the funding. We're really excited about that. That's a step in the right direction. Really appreciate Admiral Phillips's work on that. Madam Chair, I just want to touch on a couple of other things real quick before I turn it over to the CAOs.
By all means.
We have our task force at the HRTPO on the Elizabeth River Crossings toll agreement, very active. Mayor Donnie Tuck, very active. Former Mayor John Rowe from Portsmouth, very active. The new mayor, we expect to be very active. Mayor Kenny Alexander, I could go on and on. It's been a very hardworking group. You know that the tunnel, the ERC assets have been sold to a new entity. There was some short-term concessions provided in terms of a toll freeze for the next year and even an extension of the toll relief program for low-income residents as part of that deal. Our task force appreciates those concessions, but really continues to work hard to aggressively look for new better ways to alleviate the impacts of these tolls on our community. So we will be monitoring that, any conversations at the General Assembly on that item very closely. And then there's some other items, but I did want to report on the I-64 gap between Hampton Roads and Richmond. Just yesterday, Brian Stevens, the president and CEO of the Hampton Roads Chamber, and myself and Pavithra had a meeting, Zoom meeting with Congressman Whitman. Representative Whitman's district, of course, includes this I-64 gap. Good conversation about how we bring attention to the need for continued investments in the gap, the 29-mile gap between Hampton Roads and Richmond. So that's going to be an item that we will continue to advocate for. Mary, everybody has copies of our regional legislative agenda that I have on the screen. I just wanted to touch on some of those quick highlights. Mary, I'm going to stop share a second. And then what I might recommend is that we go around the localities. And if you would like, I could do a roll call. And it's not that people have to give information, but if there is an item that you're tracking or that you're really looking to address this General Assembly session, we thought it might be helpful to hear that from everybody.
Agreed. I think it would be best just to do the roll call just to make it, more efficient and organized. So if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So let's start with Chesapeake today. Chris Price, anything Chesapeake's going to be monitoring?
Good morning. I think the biggest thing on our radar screen is monitoring any changes to sovereign or qualified immunity. So we're opposed to any changes there, or at least the ones that have been proposed to date. And I know we're actively tracking that.
Thanks, Chris. Franklin, Amanda?
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep, absolutely.
So, to echo Chris's comment, the sovereign immunity is something that we're very much against. And then the other main issue for us is regarding the gaming machines. We've had difficulty with those facilities. They attract crime. We've had a murder at one recently. ABC has refused to step up. The current language that was adopted by the General Assembly that allows them to continue to exist is vague at best and doesn't give us the tools we need to prosecute anything at our local Commonwealth Attorney's Office. And ABC refuses to step up to not only ensure that the quote legal ones are in compliance, but that the ones that aren't registered or paying the $1,200 per machine per month tax are compliant. So we've contacted VML, and I had an email exchange with Michelle Gowdy this morning. We're going to be sending her a narrative about the issues that we've had over the last 6 months. She indicated that there is probably a bill going to be filed that changes the games of skill to casino type games and allows them to be permanent. So we would be very much against that. Or as I shared with Senator Lucas, we would ask that a locality that wanted to ban these machines be allowed to do so if we wanted to opt out of their presence in our community. So Senator Lucas does represent the city of Franklin, but is very much in favor of these machines because of the tax revenue that they generate for the Commonwealth. And I certainly understand that, but the cost to the community and our police department and the tax it puts on our resources to respond and keep people safe outweighs, in my opinion, any tax revenue to the Commonwealth. So I've spoken at length to her and her office about that. I don't think we'll get anywhere. She was pretty frank. The Commonwealth needs this revenue until the casinos are built in Portsmouth or Norfolk. So that's a hot topic button for us.
Thank you for sharing that, Amanda. Gloucester County, Brent.
So in addition to the broadband priorities that are listed in the regional legislative agenda, and I'm not sure if we're going to get any traction with any legislation this year, but it is under, at least to some extent, under General Assembly control, the rules associated with the VATI grant. Pretty important for more rural localities as we're looking to, breach the digital divide for our residents. Gloucester has had substantial challenge in leveraging both federal and state level broadband funding opportunities, including CARES Act funding opportunities, some of it due to our more conservative interpretation of legislations, I guess. But we're looking for the governor and his broadband guru to reconsider their 90% underserved limitation for funding through VATI. They had considered a 75% underserved limitation in the last cycle, and then COVID-19 hit, and well, evidently everything in Richmond stopped, and they said, we're not going to do anything we said we were going to do. And they went back to the 90%, which disqualifies pretty much all of the rest of Gloucester for any potential assistance in funding through VATI. So maybe not so much with respect to legislation in the General Assembly, but we're pushing in a lot of different directions to help get those programs expanded. And one item that I'd say that might have some implication regionally or perhaps Commonwealth-wide, interesting to note that for general reassessments, counties are currently permitted, Gloucester County currently permitted to perform a general reassessment on a 1-year cycle, a 2-year cycle, a 4-year cycle, a 5-year cycle, or a 6-year cycle. We happen to have determined that a 3-year cycle is probably in the best interest of our community. However, that's not permitted by state code. It's a conflagration of a number of pork-style legislative attempts over a number of years in a number of different sections of the code that have really kind of fragmented the way that it's regulated. But we think that it's very ripe for rewriting. We've asked Delegate Hodges to consider it, but I doubt that it will make this year's slate, as I understand that legislators are being limited to only 7 pre-filed bills each this year. Other than that, we're really looking to make sure that we maintain the progress that we've made with regard to the coastal environmental and economic development measures that have been so successful for the Middle Peninsula and rural coastal communities over the course of the past 2 years, and very much so keeping an eye on solar and impacts with revenue associated with solar development in our community, hoping to ensure that we can at least sustain the progress that we've seen over the course of the past couple of years, and that progress forward in the coming session does no harm. So that's what I have to add for Gloucester.
Thank you, Brent. Mary, Hampton?
So I'm not going to repeat ones that have already been brought up, but we share some of the same concerns that Chris and Amanda brought up. But 2 things that we are seeking, I know our delegates are putting in bills that may be of interest to others, particularly more urban localities, relate to sort of clutter and vacant buildings, and enhanced code enforcement tools. I'm not sure if you all are aware, but prior to 2013, localities had the ability to require registration of any building that had been vacant for over 12 months. And that went away and got sort of tighter to a more limited definition of vacant building registration. What's happened is that we found that we get an increasing number of squatters moving into vacant buildings, and some of those vacant buildings in which squatters have taken residence have become places where crimes have occurred, and to include shootings and homicides. And so we need to really have the ability to do more with vacant building registration, and are taking that up. And it may be an issue to some of, as I said, some of you that have more vacant buildings. The other one deals with clutter in front yards. This is probably the #1 complaint we get from residents about blighted conditions. And as you all likely know, state code really only allows, safety related regulations for the most part. Weed and debris is an exception, but the weed and debris law as it's currently written is pretty constraining in terms of what you can do with an abundance of clutter in the front yard. And by this, we were not trying to get at, just people's personal style for what they want to have in their front yard, but unworkable, items that aren't working and just being thrown in the front yard, almost as if the front yard is, a garbage area. And we have lots of examples of this pictorially to share with the General Assembly, and just needing to have some ability to deal with that, to prohibit, to help prevent declining property values. And I know that there's several other localities that have expressed an interest in going in on that one as well. But I just wanted to put those 2 out there because these tend to be some blight issues for many of us. And as I get the actual bill numbers and whatnot, I'll be glad to share those with anybody who's interested in those.
Thank you, Mary. On to Randy in Isle White County. Randy.
All right. Sorry, I'm trying to hit the mute button here.
Sorry about that.
Our biggest issue is still the orphan outfall issue. And in the last General Assembly, there was budget language that requested VDOT and DEQ to study the issue and make a recommendation on options. So we are waiting for that information. We're still getting calls and complaints about water runoff from the VDOT roadways impacting property owners downstream and creating issues for them that they have to deal with. And nobody, is taking responsibility for that. the county is not a regulated utility in that standpoint. So we don't feel that if we start that process, it's going to open us up to every request from to fix VDOT's issues. So that's the issue we're still dealing with, and we're tracking that to see if VDOT and DEQ come up with a solution or recommendation.
Thanks, Randy. James City County, Scott?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. I don't know that we have a lot to add. We certainly are concerned about the immunity issue. Well, in terms of legislators picking up bills, I think with the limitations on them, I don't know if either of these will gain traction, but they would affect more than just James City. And the two that our board was interested in was a distribution of sales tax by physical location versus zip codes. We feel as a county side that we're missing some revenues that just are hard to track, and there's not enough pressure on the retailers to make sure they're getting to where they're physically going in terms of the sales tax revenue. And then the other was related to absentee ballots being accounted for in the precincts from which the people live versus the central precinct, so that the elected officials can have better details about the election results and what their constituency was doing. So I think that's it for us.
Thanks, Scott. Newport News, Cindy?
Yes, as others have said, we have position statements on most of the items that have been mentioned and share the same concerns. One particular thing that I will mention, while it's not a major thing, but it's something that we were actually pretty excited about for our last year budget process, and it has to do with our focus on youth development and young people and programs for youth, and how we can kind of do some intervention with that group as necessary. So one of the things that we were asking for is some enabling legislation to authorize the creation for local governments to do youth court programs. We actually, as part of the budget, as I mentioned, had come up with, we thought, a pretty innovative program that we were pretty excited about. And we came up with the initiative in talking with the state, only to find out when we were looking at putting the funding to it that we didn't have the authority to do it. So we're stepping back and seeing if we can get some legislation that will allow all localities to create these kind of programs. And it's basically a peer review process and early intervention for maybe minor crimes, misdemeanors, those type of things. So we're looking at that, and Delegate Mullins has agreed to carry that for us. But otherwise, I said we share some of the other things that I've heard already on this call.
Thanks, Cindy. Chip from Norfolk?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Again, I think with the bill limits, we've kind of stuck with the PDC's legislative agenda and other things, and picking off certain parts that Norfolk really.
Oh, sorry, Chip, you froze up there on us.
Definitely want to thank Mary and her folks in Hampton. We're joining with them to support the vacant property one and the blight one. Those are two huge issues for Norfolk, and so we're really happy that Mary brought that one up, and are more than happy to join forces with Hampton on that one. And we've got our delegates working on that one as well. And then one that we have, I doubt that we're going to be able to get anything going with it this year, just simply because of the lateness of this. But many of you may have seen the paper this morning. So we have a certain council member who will now be one of the delegates up in Richmond representing our city. That particular delegate has had a real passion around family day home regulations. In particular, there is no capability for a city in Virginia to have any regulatory oversight of day homes that have less than 5 children. In a weird way in which the legislation is written, counties are allowed to have oversight of that, but not cities. And so we're hopeful that particular council member will be able to do something, but I suspect because of the lateness of the election and whatever, we probably won't have any capability of doing that this year, but that'll be on our radar for next year. And then obviously we have a myriad of resilience issues and flooding issues, But I think, Bob, thanks to your team and your legislative, I think everything that we would like to see, you've already baked that pretty much into the PDC's regional legislative agenda. So we'll just be supporting those particular things out of the regional agenda.
Thank you, Chip. Randy Wheeler, sorry I didn't see you trying to get in there. Appreciate you joining us.
Oh, you didn't see me because I got in real late. I apologize for being late. I came in a little bit into this conversation. We generally have the same issues and concerns that just about everybody does, so I'm not going to rehash those. We particularly share support, Mary, for what you're doing with blighted properties. Not so much vacant properties, but semi halfway constructed properties, and certainly the neighborhood blighted properties. The poor example of the Sanford and Son junkyard that really is an individual landfill uncovered in people's front yards. So we would help in any way we could on that. There's only one bill that any of our delegation members are putting in at our request this year, and it doesn't directly impact all of you, but I'll spend a minute and tell you what it is, because it may impact you in the future if it hasn't up till now. You may be aware that effective July 1st of this year, economic development authorities were required to do the same conflict of interest filing paperwork that we do, and council members, board members do, and all of that. In a small community that struggles to get people to take on these volunteer uncompensated jobs, we literally had a majority of our EDA say, you know what, I'm not really willing to go through the effort and disclose this much of my personal situation for a job for which I meet seldom and get compensated not at all. And so majority of them resigned, and we actually went for a while without a functioning EDA. And so we asked both of our delegation members, and Senator Norman is going to put in the bill, which basically, as written at the moment, would allow smaller jurisdictions of 25,000 or less, or combined EDAs of jurisdictions with a combined population of 25,000 people or less, to not have to have that as a mandatory requirement. I don't know if this caused anyone else problems, but we lost, like I said, the majority of our EDA over it. And it was really not because they had a lot to hide and don't have anything to hide, but for a job that pays nothing, they felt it was too much, it felt too personal. And so anyway, Senator Norman is putting that forward. And as Chip said, the regional legislative program, both at the PDC and TPO, is generally and specifically reflective of where we are in most things. So that's where we are.
Thank you, Randy. Portsmouth, was Lavoris able to join us? Let's move on to Smithfield.
We don't have anything significant to add that hadn't already been mentioned. The only piece that we're asking to go forward, and it looks like Delegate Brewer is going to carry it for us, deals with golf cart regulations. And we've had a desire to be able to find ways to get them from the neighborhoods into the downtown area. And we've got some speed limit hurdles that we have to cross to deal with that. So Ms. Brewer does have a draft piece that would help us get that into town, but I don't know that that really benefits anything else, because we figured that if we went for a wholesale exemption on speed limits across the Commonwealth, it would never fly. So our request that's going forward is only for the town of Smithfield. That way we might have a snowball's chance of it passing.
Thanks, Mike. Southampton County?
Thanks, Bob. Not a lot to add from what's already been shared. I was interested in Randy just shared with regard to the legislation that Senator Norman is going to put in. We did have 2 members of our IDA resign because of the new disclosure requirements. So that would be something that we would certainly support.
Thanks, Michael. On to Suffolk, Al Moore.
Yes, Bob. Good afternoon. Most of it's been spoken to already on Suffolk's interest, but really on the broadband and the VATI grants, we'd like to see the criteria open up a little bit where municipalities would be more of a lead. Of course, solar farms are a big issue here in Suffolk these days, as they are in some of the other rural communities. One thing for us is supporting additional, ensuring that our transportation funding remains in place for the region. And we have a focus on hopefully some transportation funding dealing with our rail crossings. We have over 30 rail crossings within Suffolk that are impacted, of course, with the positive growth in our ports. And so that's something on our agenda. And again, going back to, I think Amanda had spoken to the gaming machines earlier, that's becoming something that we see an issue with.
Thanks, Al. Surrey County, Melissa, were you able to join from Surrey? Virginia Beach, I saw that Patrick had to move on. Patrick, I think I saw you signing off with the text to everybody. Let's move on to Williamsburg. Andrew?
Thanks, Bob. So in Williamsburg, not a lot to add. I will say that the golf course or the golf cart item in Smithfield is interesting to me. So if you could send that information along, I'd like to see what you're changing about speed limits. Our community just started having a conversation about golf carts in a similar fashion. And so I don't know that the council has an appetite, but they've expressed interest in maybe doing something there. So I would appreciate taking a look at that. The only item I think that's a little bit different is we did have a broadband item on our agenda. And what we proposed was that the Commonwealth either amend existing grant programs or create new ones to address not only infrastructure availability, but also affordability. And then we proposed that a financing vehicle to help fund that would be to equalize and standardize the communication tax and dedicate the new revenue that results from that to the new broadband grant. And, I don't know that that's got any traction. There seems to be no desire to mess with the communications tax at all, but it does seem to make a lot of sense.
Thank you, Andrew. Windsor, William?
Good morning, everybody, or excuse me, afternoon. All the items that Windsor is tracking have been mentioned by others, but I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. And Neil Morgan from York?
Hey, one thing that I haven't heard anybody else mention, for years, we've always had something suggesting that the expensive public hearing advertising requirements in the dominant print news media be done away with as a state requirement. And I think historically, members of the General Assembly have been reluctant to sponsor it because they didn't want to anger, the businesses that were covering them. Ms. Mugler has expressed an interest in the proposal this year, and it might be different this time because, for example, in Hampton Roads, as we all know, the Daily Press and the Pilot have walked away from all their taxable assets. We have to call somebody in Chicago to haggle about an advertisement, and little old York County spends $70,000 a year on those ads. So some of y'all, could probably pick up a couple $100,000. So if anybody would like to pile on, I don't know if it has any serious chance or not, but of course the other part of the argument is these days, you can put all your public hearing notices on your own social media and various types of electronic media. And it used to be the argument you're sort of supporting one of the pillars of your community by, paying for print media, but I don't see the pillar anymore. So we're going to give it a shot.
I might add, Neil, we've had a couple cases where the Daily Press has messed up our ad, and we've had to postpone rezonings or use permit applications just because they messed up the legal ad. Whereas if we could rely on the fact that we had posted it on the internet, that business or individual would not be impacted. So, we'll be glad to give some examples to help with that. Of course, we shared Delegate Mugler, but I think there's a real case to be made, not just financially, but in terms of the impact to the applicants in these situations. And it's gotten worse since the local assets have disappeared. So.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And also, you can sort of make an argument now to the General Assembly that you're talking about some out of town, out of state entity, not, one of your local businesses. So,
right.
Neil, for what it's worth, in Northern Virginia, several of the daily and weekly newspapers in many of the counties have gone out of business, and so that's leaving the Washington Post as the only paper of record, which causes some challenges. So you might pick up some support that maybe wasn't there before.
Interesting.
We actually, I didn't mention this before, but we took a position. We, the council, took a position on the same issue 3-4 months ago. And wrote to the delegate, which we share on the same issue. So we're very supportive of that as well. We have, these small little variances and other things that individual homeowners need, and they need to pay $500 or $600 as an application fee to cover the cost of advertisement, which my council considers to be excessive for at least some things that we do. So you can count on us for that as well.
Mary, I'll turn it back over to you. Mary, before I do that, I'm watching the chat section. Michael from Smithfield, I see a lot of interest in what you're thinking about related to golf carts. If you just wanted to, you could either send that to the group, or if you want to send that on to me, I'll make certain all the CAOs receive that. Chip, I see in Norfolk, I know you're dealing with those issues too. But probably an issue if you're not dealing with, you will in some neighborhood eventually. So Michael, if you don't mind sharing that, I'll be certain to push it out to everybody. Thank you. Mary, back to you.
Thank you, Bob. We also anticipated that we might want to talk about COVID issues today, and I'm sensitive to the time, knowing it's 12:45, but it goes without saying that we've had significant spikes in positivity rates, all of us, some of us more than others. The case counts are getting worse. I'm sure you're hearing, as we're hearing, that the hospital systems are getting more stressed. We know there's a governor's press conference today at 2. I don't, obviously, as typical, don't have any clue what he's going to say. But it probably is going to behoove us, whether we do it today, if people's time is running out, maybe we set up another call in the very near future, but to talk about where we are. I mean, frankly, things are worse now than they were when we did a lot of our shutdowns early on. And, there's better info. There are a lot of reasons for that, and I'm not necessarily suggesting that we, do all the things we did in the beginning, but I do think we're in this tricky position where things are worse. And I don't know that we're all sending a unified message that we really need to pay attention so we don't become an LA County, which is the horror story that we're all seeing on the news every day. And how do we deal with that? So that was part one about why I thought we should talk about this, whether it's today or at some other time. Secondarily, and some of us on the peninsula have been talking about this, but I want to be kind, but I've not been impressed with the vaccine planning efforts that we're getting with our health department on our side. I don't know how it's going on the south side, but we're getting conflicting messages. On one hand, being told that local government essential employees will be covered in 1B, and then getting a list of what 1B is, and really only having police, teachers, and sheriff officials on there. Fire, of course, having been in 1A, but employees like social service workers, adult protective services, child support workers, et cetera, that are really in harm's way, not being on the list in 1B or 1C. And so, we were talking about on the peninsula having some further conversations with our health district directors. And I think we probably have to wait till we see what the governor says, because that may change some of this. But I personally am interested in what's happening on the south side, and whether you all are having similar issues, or whether it's something unique to the peninsula. But there's a lot of questions we're getting from not only our workforce, but from residents that hopefully the governor's press conference will answer. But of course, we know we're the ones that people come to for these answers. So I thought it was important that we talk about, COVID and what we're doing, and try, as we were at the outset, to be as unified as possible, understanding that, situations are different in different localities, but there's certainly more strength when we act together in sending messages to our community and actions if we're going to have to do more things like possibly closing some of our facilities where community transmission may be more likely. So I'll just put it out there and see if people want to have that conversation today, or if we want to maybe try to circle back after the governor's press conference and talk later in the week or early next week and have a regional conversation.
Mary, I think we really need to have almost a separate call after the governor's discussion today, because we had that conversation today with our health department. Of course, my wife actually works in the health department down in Elizabeth City, and they're having mass vaccinations for people 75 and older today. So, the media picks that up because it's the same media market. So we're getting calls from residents about, why aren't we doing that here? And our health department's indicated they're having trouble getting enough vaccines. So if they order 500, they may only get 300. So I think that's really my concern was, why are we not getting enough vaccine? Because I think that the health departments are ready to move forward if they had enough quantity. And so I think that's a bigger discussion. I'm really interested to see what everyone else is hearing from their community members, because we're getting a lot of complaints about that.
Yeah. I will add,
Can
I've
I
also
comment?
heard the number of vaccinators is an issue. And we've, been talking with the health department about, can we speed things along if we offer up some of, like our EMS providers or, possibly other medical professionals that we might have. We have various nurses in different locations, whether they're in the jails or the schools, or we have a Healthy Families program that has nurses. And so far we haven't been able to get traction on our offer to help, provide more vaccinators to help with this process too. So I think it's part vaccine, Randy, but also part the number of people who can administer the vaccine.
If I could just comment, I think having a dedicated discussion is a good idea. And it's kind of playing off your point, Mary. It just feels like local government has a lot of potential capacity to help, but no one is giving us the tools or the information to help. And it's, we just don't know what's going to happen next. And you think about other kinds of emergencies around here, who ends up actually having the capacity to do most of the response. And we've got all kinds of people and facilities, but the health department has to, give us enough information to do something. So we're just kind of sitting around waiting. Supposedly they're gonna, some equipment got dropped off at a community center. It just showed up, a pallet, some generators, some tents. Nobody told us what it was for. There's a lot of things like that. It's just, and I'm sure they're worn out and they're underfunded and all that, but all these people on this call could do more if we just were armed with the information or empowered to do something.
Yeah. Well, Bob, could you help us get a time in the very near future? I don't know if we want to try to agree on a time now, or if you want to send a doodle poll or something, whatever is best for folks.
So
But
what, Mary, if
or with the governor. Okay.
I apologize.
No, I'm sorry.
If I may, that 9 a.m. time slot was working for people. I don't know if Friday would be okay at 9 a.m. If you felt you needed till Monday at 9 a.m., maybe that's a better time. But Friday, if we could agree to that now, I could get something out after this meeting for a calendar hold.
Yeah, I saw some people doing thumbs up. Would Friday at 9 a.m. work for folks?
And Mary, I realize that might not be everybody, but if we can get most of you or your deputies, that'll at least get us a start.
Sounds good.
Friday at 9 a.m. Mary, if I may, the other thing I wanted to mention, over the holidays, we were able to work with Cox Communication. The It's in Our Hands campaign that your public information officers worked on and you all supported. Cox Communication saw that video, reached out to us and asked us to get it down to 30 seconds, which we did over the holidays. and they began a free public service announcement on that, started yesterday and will proceed through the entire month of January.
Oh, that's great news.
Yeah, so your campaign ought to be out there pretty visible now. You know, just that reminder of what people can do. So I did want to mention that real quick. But I will, after this meeting, get out a hold for 9 a.m. on Friday. I see Brent has a question, Mary.
Sure, go for it, Brent.
Did we want to wait until Friday or 9 a.m. tomorrow? I'm just thinking that, I mean, and it depends on what comes out of the governor's discussion today. I mean, sometimes there's nothing material and sometimes it's very largely material. Considering we were intending to have this conversation today, would we want to maybe advance it to 9 a.m. tomorrow? I'm not trying to put a damper on anybody's schedule or anything, but you know, I don't know if you guys' schedules anything like mine. 9 a.m. any day is the same as 9 a.m. pretty much any other day.
I'm willing to prioritize tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. if other people can do it.
Go with 9 a.m. tomorrow.
I'm seeing some thumbs up.
And Mary,
everybody, but it looks
okay. And a Zoom call, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get that out 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the logistical support, Bob. Appreciate it. The last thing I think we had on the agenda was Bob was just looking for regional topics of interest to plan future meetings. If anybody brought items that they want to share where quickly we can, or perhaps we can just share that by email given where we are in timing. Bob, did you want to say?
Yeah, what we wanted to do is, of course, these meetings to be successful need to be valued to you, and our attendance is just continues to be tremendous. We have 25 on right now. We've had 29 the whole time. Brent, I know you suggested at the end of the year, you said recycling continues to be a regional issue. That's one that's on our list, right? That we want to bring forward to conversation at the CAO committee. Mary, in the spirit of time, what I might ask is if anybody else has any topics that you think would be important conversations, maybe email myself, Mary, and Michael Johnson as your staff and your chair and your vice chair, and we can get those queued up for agendas. Mary, unless you want to call for discussion today, I want to be cognizant of everybody's time.
As do I, and that's why I was thinking an email might suffice. So if you do have items you'd like us to see us to prepare for future agenda, we like to plan several months out if we can, and make sure that you're finding these meetings worthwhile. So we look to you for a source of particular topics that you think we may need to spend some time on. With that, I think we've covered our full agenda. I just want to see if there's anything that for the good of the group, anyone wants to bring up before we have a formal adjournment.
Mary, just one quick question. Should we have anyone from the health departments, maybe one or two health directors on the conference call tomorrow just for information to help us with the discussion about vaccinations, or would that be maybe later time?
You know, my initial thought, but I'm open to whatever you all say, is it might be helpful for us to get our sort of collective position together first and really share information. And then, you know, certainly having a conversation with one or all of them, you know, together would be good, but at least we could be speaking with one voice when we do that.
Okay.
I mean, that's just, but I mean, I'm open however you all want to do it.
Harry, could we check, and maybe it's a simple call to our public health directors, you know, they're meeting, right? I mean, they're doing these regional meetings as well. What would be probably helpful for us is after, I'm assuming they're going to probably have a meeting very soon after whatever happens today at 2 as well. And maybe after that one, if we could get someone from that group. I agree with Randy. I mean, even mine, I had a hour-long conversation at about 10 o'clock last night with the one here in Norfolk with Dr. Lindsay. And I mean, they don't really know what's going on. I mean, there's still a lot of uncertainty with them. But maybe we could find out when they're going to have their next one and then get a report out from that group.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I do think it's really good for us to have engagement with them. And I do think, you know, to be fair to all of them, I think they're just as frustrated as we are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that was crystal clear last night to me.
I think Neil talked about, rightly that they're underfunded and they're overstressed and there's a lot that they have to do. But that's where I was just thinking if we could, all work together more, and they could be authorized to tap into our resources, that we could all do better for our workforce and our community. And, it would just be helpful, I think, if we had a list of, what we're willing to offer and what we can do, and, and then have that conversation with them about how do we best help them, help us and our communities. But yeah, I'm sure they are going to be doing as you just described. And I'll try to find out from mine when that's happening. And certainly you all may do that as well, and see how we might get a quick meeting together, maybe early next week. So we can get our head together maybe tomorrow about that. And I think there are other things for us to talk about besides the vaccination clinics, frankly. I'm still, where are we on messaging to our community? What are we doing? I know Drew, did telework only for 3 weeks in Williamsburg. He has some staffing challenges, as a smaller community, but I mean, that prompted my workforce asking, am I going to do the same thing? And, and there's those kinds of things where we can share and maybe, work through some other issues. And not all those issues may be of interest to the health directors either. So if you all are agreeable, I'm thinking tomorrow would maybe be good for us. And then we'll absolutely follow up on Chip's and Randy's notion of meeting with our health directors as quickly as possible. Does that work for folks? Okay. But thank you for that point. Anything else? All right. Well, I want to thank you all for a great meeting. Like I said at the outset, I know we still have COVID challenges to deal with, but I wouldn't want to work with any other group of people to navigate these things. And I'm glad that we have the collegiality and partnership that we have here. Bob?
Mary, I apologize. I think we can do this very quick if I may. Mary, I know Ron Carley has an offer of resources to our city managers and county administrators. Would you mind if Ron just gave 2 minutes, because I think this offer might be of value to the team?
I apologize, Ron, because he asked me about saying something, so I'm glad you reminded me, Bob. Yes, let's give Ron just a couple minutes real quick.
The COVID discussion was much more important. I'll only take 30 seconds. I'm teaching both an ethics class and a human resources class this fall. And I will send you an email, and my offer is, if you would like for my class to do an analysis of your ethics code and provide you some feedback on it, we really like to do that. And I'll give you more details about it. And if there are any human resources issues that you would like to have research that I can accommodate within a graduate class, then I'd be happy to consider those as well. But I will send you a follow-up email and give you the details and how to reach out to me if you have an interest.
Thank you for the offer. And I'm sure there will be many of us that take you up on that. And thank you, Bob, for reminding me. I apologize, Ron, that I did forget when I got passionate about all these COVID issues. All right. Again, thank you all for your time today. If I may, we'll officially adjourn the meeting. I know that the Peninsula managers are scheduled to talk. I know some of us had talked before about the PSAP program, but not everybody was able to be there. And my assistant had worked with all of your assistants to get a time for us to talk. And I think it was set for 1:30. I just want to see, do you all want to take a 30-minute break and convene at 1:30, or do you want to get off of this call and go on to that other Zoom link right now? And that's just for the Peninsula managers.
Mary, this is Cindy. I'm okay with going ahead with a 5-minute break and getting on the other call.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Right.
Let's do that. Let's get off this call. Maybe, take 5 minutes and then get on the other link that was provided to you.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. See you all shortly. Everyone have a great week.
Thank you.
Bye.